In this video, I'm going to show you guys an opening which is simply going to make you too strong for your opponent, the Scotch Opening. And stick around till the end because I'll break down one of the best Scotch Opening games ever played, so you'll master this opening by the end of the video. So let's dive in. So Scotch Opening is played with the white pieces and white starts with 1 e4. e5, we develop the knight, black develops the knight, and here white generally continues with bishop to c4 or bishop to b5, going for the Italian or the royal pace, with the idea of simply castling up, putting the rook on an open file, with the idea of c3, d4, striking in the center. But at the place of going for all these normal stuff, which is kind of well known, I'm going to recommend you guys to simply go in the center directly by playing the move d4, striking in the center. What is the idea, you might ask? The idea is to simply remove black's main pawn on e5, which makes black lose the center control, because after d4 our idea is simply to push the pawn or even capturing the pawn on e5, winning up a pawn. So black is not really having much but to simply capture the pawn on d4, which is kind of a forced move for black. We simply capture the pawn back with the knight, and now after knight cross g4, now I believe majorly black is having three ways to continue the possession, which is knight cross g4, bishop to c5, or simply knight f6. All the three moves focuses on developing their minor pieces. So first, starting with the most obvious move in this position, which is to simply capture the knight on d4. We simply capture back the knight, and this is an evergreen position for white. Why? Because you are already having a well centralized queen in the center of the board, which is on d4. You are already having a very strong pawn on e4, which helps the white to gain more center control. And yeah, it's an evergreen position. You can simply continue the position with bishop c4, putting the bishop on a nice diagonal, castle up, develop your knight, develop your bishop, centralize both of your rook to d1 and e1, and you can even strike with f4, e5, grabbing more space in the center. And believe me, white is already having an edge in this position because there is no knight on c6 for black to attack the white queen. So the queen and the pawn are optimally placed, and white is having absolutely no problem. So that's exactly what happens if your opponent goes for capturing the knight on d4, which is already a bad move. Now, looking at the move like bishop to c5, simply focusing on developing the bishop, that makes sense, and attacking the knight on d4 two times. So we need to defend this knight. Now, there are majorly three ways for white to continue the position, which is to capture the knight, going back with the knight to attack the bishop, or the third move, which I would like to prefer, is to play the move bishop e3. Why? Because at the place of moving the same piece twice, I'm simply focusing on developing my other pieces like the bishop. And the bishop on e3 already sets up a trap for white. For example, if black continues with knight to f6, it's already a blunder because we are already looking forward to knight cross c6, which attacks the queen, and the moment you capture it back, you will see the bishop is simply hanging on c5. So it's already a blunder for black. So black can't really play a move natural like knight to f6. d6 is still fine because it protects the bishop, though it's still fine because we can take on c6 and ruin up black's pawn structure. So after bishop e3, black's good move and the main move in this position is to play the move queen to f6, which not only develops the queen but also put another attacker on the knight on d4. So in this position, there are majorly two ways for white to continue the position. If you want to go for some sort of an unbalanced position, which is going to make this position even more crazier, it's just simply going to play the move knight to b5. What is the idea? Our idea is to simply capture on c7 with the idea of giving a check and capturing the rook. And at the same time, we are also attacking the bishop on c5. So black is having the only move in this position, which is to simply capture on e3. Because if you go back with the bishop, I can simply ruin up black's pawn structure. Bishop b6, I can trade off the bishop and play the move knight c7 check and win a rook. So black have to take the bishop. And now we cannot go for capturing knight cross c7 because after king to d8, I cannot capture the rook because there is a mate hanging on f2. So first I have to capture the bishop, and already in this position it looks like black should already be better. Why? Because white is having double pawns on the e file, and maybe like the only move for black is to play the move queen to h4 check. If black plays a random move like queen d8, so simply going back with the queen, defending the pawn, it's already a bad way to continue the position, because after queen to g4, we are simply attacking the pawn on g7. Black have to play the move g6, and this is our idea. We want to play the move queen f4 all along to attack the pawn on c7. Black have to defend it with d6 the only way. And now we can simply play the move bishop to c4, attacking the pawn two times. Black can play the move knight to e5, attacking the bishop and also defending the pawn. And you see, White is having double pawns on the e file, but it also opens up the f file at the same time, which is going to help white in this position by simply castling up. Black cannot really capture the bishop because it's one move mate, and white's idea is already to capture the pawn on f7. So the only move, kind of an only move for black, is to play the move queen e7, trying to defend this pawn. But now simply knight to c3 with the idea of knight d5 coming in, attacking the queen, which black can't really stop it. So black have to go for capturing the bishop, but after knight d5, capturing on cu7, just get the move rook to d1. You can even go for capturing the rook, but rook d1, getting all the pieces into the game. Knight into d6 is coming, which is just too strong for white, and that's completely winning for white. So that's a very complicated line. If your opponent goes for playing the move queen d8, the main move is rather queen h4 check. After g3, queen e4, knight c7, king move, we can capture the rook, giving up the rook. But now we are having queen d6 with the idea of threatening mate and win on queen to f8, and that's a mate. So black have to play the move knight to f6, and after knight f6, knight to d2, there are already a couple of ways for black to continue the possession. So I can't really give you an estimate idea what can be a move for black to continue the possession, though the best move for black is to play queen cross h2. White can castle up long, and still the possession is very complicated because definitely white is an exchange. Okay, white is not really an exchange down, but somehow white is pawn down, but black's king at the same time is extremely weak. If black plays something like queen to d5, trading off the queen, we can give a check, castle up long, sacrifice the a2 pawn, and after knight b3, you will realize black queen is kind of out of the game, and this is already still a very complicated possession, but practically speaking up, I believe white should be having a good advantage. So that's exactly how you can play this position, which is extremely complicated, but rather going to give you a complete, simple, a beginner-friendly idea, which is just simply play the move. Sorry about that. Which is just simply play the move c3, with the idea of simply protecting the knight on d4. Black can play the move knight to e7, bishop to c4, simply focusing on developing the bishop now, castle up, d6, and now you can simply take on c6. Why? Because after knight cross c6, black can't really capture with the queen because there is already a pawn on d6. So black have to capture it back with the knight, and after bishop cross takes, you will realize black is already having double pawns on the c file. And so that's why we are going to take advantage of it by playing the move f4. As there is no pawn on d6, white's idea is already to play the move e5, grabbing more space in the center. And I'm already loving white's position with the idea of knight d2. Maybe you can put the knight on e4. Just move the queen, get the rook into e1. Maybe f5, f6 can be a very dangerous move for black. And I believe, once again, white is in a perfect position with happy possession. So that's exactly what happens if your opponent plays the move bishop to c5. So coming to the one of the most natural moves, which is to play the move knight to f6, simply developing the knight. In this position, once again, there are multiple ways. I would like to suggest you guys to capture the knight on c6. Black captures with the b pawn, because if black takes with the d pawn, we can happily trade off the queens in this position. Black can't really no more castle up in the future. And now we can play the move f3, just keeping the solid pawn structure, put the bishop on e3, maybe knight to d2, castle up long, put the bishop on c4. White is once again having an evergreen position. We can anytime grab more space on the king side with h4, h5, h6, and white is already too much better. Like a very comfortable position, I would say. So b cross e6 is the most natural move, and now we are going to take the advantage of it by pushing the pawn in the center with e5, attacking the knight on f6. So first of all, if black simply moves up the knight, c4, once again attacking the knight goes back to b6, bishop to d3. First, developing the bishop at the place of developing the queenside pieces, because I want to castle up as soon as possible, so black can play the move bishop to b4 check, which is one of the most natural moves, giving a check with the idea of castling in the future. Bishop d2, trading off the bishop, castle up, rook e8, f4. Once again, I am loving this position for white. Why? Because first of all, black is not really having the main defender, which is the knight on f6, which generally protects the h7 square or guards the king side, because in this position, the king is extremely weak. Why? I can simply play the move queen h5 now, provoking black to play the move g6, so that once black plays g6, the dark squares are going to be extremely weak. I can simply play knight e4, knight f6, and black's doom. That's it. That's how easily you can continue the possession. You can even get your a rook into the game with rook e1, rook e3, rook h3. And believe me, black is not really having much to do, and yeah, that's a perfect position. So that's how you can play if your opponent plays knight d5. If your opponent plays the move queen e7, which is the main move, kind of pinning up the pawn on e5, we must play the move queen e2, first removing the pin with the idea of capturing the knight now. Knight d5 is the only move, c4, knight b6. And now, sorry about that, first knight c3 developing the piece, and now black can play the move bishop to a6, double attacking the pawn on c4. Nothing to worry about. We can simply play the move b3 with the idea of developing the bishop to b2. So g6 with the idea of bishop g7, adding one more attacker to the pawn on e5. So bishop b2, bishop e5, bishop to g7, and now simply f4. Once again, simply protecting the pawn. What is the idea of white? How should white continue the possession? After castle up, you can castle up long. Why? Because after castling up long, your king is not only safe because of your multiple pieces near the king, and also at the same time, you are also having more space in the center. Black bishop on a6 is kind of useless, staring at the pawn, which doesn't make any sense. And now your idea is to simply move the queen because to get rid of this pin. h4, h5 is always an idea in your back. And believe me, black is already feeling some huge pressure. Even knight e4, knight f6 can be a very strong idea. And white is having an evergreen possession, definitely in the driver's seat. So that's exactly you can play if your opponent plays knight to f6. And there is a random move in this position which popped into my mind while I was analyzing this position, which is d5. If you are facing a beginner, or I don't know, even a good player, if he's seeing this position for the first time, or if he's trying to find some good ideas, d5 can be a move that you can face in your games. After d5, black is kind of striking in the center, trying to remove a white central pawn as well. We can simply capture the pawn, queen takes, and now black wants to capture the knight on d4. So here we are first going to give a check to the black king with queen to e2 check, bishop to e7, and you will notice that the c7 pawn is a weak pawn. There is no queen on d8 to defend the pawn, so we can play the move knight to b5, simply attacking the pawn on c7 with the knight. The queen have to go back to defend the pawn, but now we have bishop f4, adding one more attacker to the pawn on c7, and black can't really stop it. So yeah, that's it. Just knight c7 is an unstoppable move. You can't remove the bishop because the bishop is pinned. And that's already game over for black. White is winning an exchange. You can play knight c3, put your rook to d1, and that's game over. That's game over. That's exactly how you can play the Scotch opening with the white pieces. So yeah, I believe you are having a basic idea about the Scotch opening. So now let me take you to one of the best games in the Scotch opening. Now let me show you guys one of the best games played in the Scotch opening with the white pieces. So Paul Morphy is playing with the white pieces, who is kind of known as the first unofficial world champion in 1800. He's playing hard, so with the white pieces he opened the game with 1 e4. We have e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and now we have the move d4. E cross g4, and now we have the move bishop to c4. At the place of capturing the pawn on d4, we have the move bishop to c4 instead. This is also known as the Scotch Gambit because at the place of recapturing the pawn on d4, instead, white simply developed the bishop. d6, white played the move c3, sacrificing one more pawn in order to gain activity. Basically, if black takes the pawn, knight takes, or even white can simply castle up because after take, I don't know, maybe white is 2 pawns down, but in the exchange, white has gotten a huge amount of development, which is also a very strong idea to play. So at the place of capturing the c3 pawn, okay, in the game we have d cross c3. Now we have queen to b3. Attacking the pawn on f7. Black plays the move queen e7 in order to defend the pawn on f7. White castle up. We have the move b6, which is already a bad move. First of all, if black goes for capturing the pawn on e4, it's already a blunder because after rook e1, the queen is trapped, and that's game over. So b6 was played, which is already a bad move. And here Paul Morphy simply captured the pawn on c3. I believe bishop b5 can also be a very strong move in this position because the light squares are extremely weak. So after bishop d7, there is a very strong move according to the engine, which is like queen d5, or even knight cross e3 can also be a very strong move in the position. But instead, Paul Morphy preferred to always keep maximum pieces on the board, so he decided to first capture the pawn with the knight. We have knight to a5 attacking the queen and the bishop, so we have queen to b4, knight cross e4, queen cross e4, bishop to b7, and this position kind of looks fine for white, for black. White plays the move rook e1, and now black decided to castle up long. And here bishop to f4, and after bishop f4 you will realize white has gotten all his pieces into the game. c6, rook c1, and now officially white has gotten all his pieces into the game. King to b8, and now we have the move knight to d5, jumping in with the knight, attacking the queen, and the pawn. Attacking the pawn 3 times. So black is not really having much, but kind of forced to capture the knight on d5. We have a trade. Attacking the queen. The queen moved. You will realize black is having 7 pawns, whereas white is having 6. So material-wise, black is a pawn up, but we have knight to d4. You will realize black is having so many light square weaknesses. Now this knight is simply going to dominate these light squares weaknesses. Black plays the move knight to e7, trying to take control of some of the light squares available in the position. But now we have an exchange sacrifice. Rook cross e7, simply removing the defender, and now we have the move queen a6, which is actually the only move to keep such a huge advantage in the position. If you try to play knight to c6 check in this position, after king b7, white is kind of losing his advantage. But instead, after queen a6, you will realize black king is not really having any square to go. So after c5, which is the only move, because white is already preparing to play the move knight to c6 with the idea of simply mating the black king on a7. So black's only response is to play the move c5. We have an en passant attacking the queen. Queen goes to c8. If black plays queen c7, knight to b5 is still a game over. So we have queen c8 and now c7 check. First giving a check, the king moved. White made a queen. Black have to capture it back. And now knight to b5. Queen to b8, defending the a7 pawn. And after rook to c7, black can't really stop this attack on a7. And in only 23 move, Paul Murphy opponent resigned and he simply won in 23 move, which is simply insane. Like he launched such a powerful attack to the black king by sacrificing a pawn in the start, then giving an exchange sacrifice, that this has become one of the best games that he has played in his own time in 1800s. And yeah, he's the master of the Scotch Gambit. The Scotch Game is the Scotch Opening. And yeah, I believe that this game definitely gave you some motivation to play the Scotch Opening. And if it did, I'm pretty glad. If it did, make sure to like, share and subscribe. And I'm going to come up with these more aggressive videos, aggressive opening like this. So make sure to implement this opening in your games. And I can bet on you that you guys are simply going to increase your chess elo and going to increase your level too soon. So I'm going to come up with these more interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess. Bye bye.